The year was 1888, and London had begun to bleed. The bodies of women were being carved open like meat in Whitechapel, but no one talks about the families, entire bloodlines, that vanished without a trace. No bodies, no screams, just empty rooms, cold beds, and silence that spread like a rot. Not just poor families, prominent ones, families with land, with secrets, with power, and then gone, as if the city itself swallowed them. Before start this story, please like and subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon. Most historians blame poverty or migration, but that's a lie, because buried in the archived correspondences of Scotland Yard is a phrase repeated across 5 files in faded ink. No sign of struggle, no sign of departure, only the sound of weeping beneath the floorboards. This isn't a ghost story. This is the story they tried to erase, a trail of forbidden clues left behind like bone fragments, a door sealed by Parliament, a letter intercepted by the Crown, a ritual older than Christianity, and a darkness no light dares chase. Tonight you'll hear what you were never supposed to know about the 7 families who vanished from London's East End in the span of 6 weeks, and the one constable who followed the trail to hell, not a metaphor, a real place, beneath your feet, right now. Because this is no longer about Jack the Ripper. This is about who fed him. Welcome to the macabre history, the families that vanished without a trace. And I warn you, what you're about to hear cannot be unheard. You won't just learn secrets. You'll remember them. You'll feel them, as if they were waiting in your bones all along. The first family to vanish was the Whitmores of Hanbury Street. Henry Whitmore, a solicitor with deep connections to the Royal Society, his wife Lydia, and their 3 daughters. On October 3, 1888, the milkmen reported an unusual silence. Curtains drawn, no movement, no barking from the family dog, usually heard at dawn. When constables entered the home, nothing was disturbed. Beds made, clothes hung, breakfast partially prepared, eggs still warm on the stove. The only sound came from beneath the floorboards, a wet rhythmic tapping, like flesh against wood. They tore up the boards, but there was no one there, only darkness and a single ivory button resting on a child's tooth. Within 24 hours, the neighbors were warned not to speak to the press. Scotland Yard sealed the house and labeled it an internal matter. But what frightened the responding officer, Constable Graham, wasn't what they found. It was what he saw in the mirror above the mantel. A second reflection. A pale man with no eyes, standing directly behind him. When he turned, the room was empty. The house was left untouched for a decade, then bulldozed. But workers reported tremors in the soil. Bones weren't found, not human ones. Something else. Something with a spine too long for its size and a skull with no lower jaw. What kind of predator leaves no trace of entry, no scream, no mess, only absence? The kind bred not in nature, but in worship. And the Whitmores weren't the only ones. Because every family that vanished in that October shared something in common. A stained glass emblem hidden somewhere in their home. A spiral with 13 hooks surrounding a central black sun. Not Christian, not pagan, but something older, carried by bloodlines that came from the northern hills of Scotland and died protecting a secret tied to land, lineage, and sacrifice. The second family vanished 3 nights later, the Balesons of Mitre Square. Samuel Baleson was a butcher, well-liked, with a reputation for generosity. His wife Miriam volunteered at the parish infirmary. Their home, modest but well-kept, was the kind people passed with a nod of comfort, until October 6th. That morning, a constable making his usual patrol noted a strange scent lingering in the air. Not decay, not rot, but something sickly sweet, like boiled molasses and salt. The front door was ajar. Inside, silence. Not a single broken item. Not a hint of violence. Just an open Bible turned to Leviticus 17. For the life of the flesh is in the blood. On the table, 7 hand-drawn symbols, identical spirals with hooked ends, were smeared in what looked like ash and wine. The butcher knives were still clean, still hung. The family dog was found outside, pacing in circles, foaming at the mouth, blind in both eyes. Investigators thought perhaps the Balesons fled. But there were no packed bags, no footprints leading from the house. Only one item missing. An iron-bound chest stored beneath the floorboards, passed down from Samuel's grandfather, a man rumored to have fled Prussia under accusations of ritual homicide. The official record labeled it disappearance by emigration. But that's a lie, because a week later a man came forward with a letter, a desperate, rambling page allegedly written by Samuel himself the night before he vanished. In it, he spoke of a figure visiting him at dusk, cloaked and wearing a mask made of stitched leather. It told him that the spiral is awake, and that the price of your meat must now be your name. He ended the letter with one line: "Don't let them dig up the cellar. What lies there remembers." Scotland Yard confiscated the letter. The man who submitted it, a coal clerk named Remy Fail, was found hanging in his shed days lay, throat cut open after the hanging, eyes removed, hands missing. His death was ruled a suicide, but the body told a different story. The third family to vanish, the Harrows of Berners Street, disappeared not in silence, but in a symphony of dread. Neighbors reported hearing the family's phonograph playing at full volume late into the night, a bizarre occurrence given the Harrows' reputation for strict routines and Sabbath silence. When police arrived the next morning, the music was still echoing through the house, a warbled waltz slowed by the phonograph's degraded mechanism. But the Harrows were gone. Gone. Yet their supper table was set. Soup still warm. Silverware polished. 3 chairs pulled back as if the family had risen mid-bite. Only the 4th chair remained tucked under, where their son, 9-year-old Nathaniel, usually sat. His shoes were found by the fireplace, neatly placed. His fingernails, however, were embedded in the mantel, as if he'd gripped it so hard they tore free, and scrawled in soot above the hearth were the words, "He comes through the music." No one knows who he was, but the officer who transcribed the scene, Sergeant Mullins, began hearing that same distorted waltz playing from his own phonograph at home, despite never owning the record. Days later, Mullins was found in his parlor, eyes sewn shut with black thread, phonograph needle embedded in his ear. No signs of struggle. The coroner simply wrote, "Died of internal screaming." The Harrows had recently acquired an antique mirror from an estate sale, an ornate oval frame with inscriptions in Hebrew and Latin, and at the bottom a single word etched backward into the glass: Yolgamoth. A name not found in any biblical text, but whispered in certain corners of esoteric Freemasonry, known only as the Listener. The mirror is gone. The shopkeeper who sold it died shortly after, locked in a soundproof chamber of his own design, blood from both ears. What few dare suggest today is that the Harrows didn't vanish. I were collected, not taken by some human hand, but by something older, something that rides vibration, that enters through resonance, like a parasite drawn to hymns sung out of tune. If it truly fed on harmony, then that night the music wasn't to mask the horror. It was to invite it. The 4th family, the Pellinghams of Flower and Dean Street, were wealthy, educated, and deeply involved in philanthropic reform. To the outside world, they were the moral spine of East London. But their home concealed a different truth, one that began to unravel on October 12th, when a chimney sweep reported hearing soft chanting from inside the flue. He assumed it was the family's maid praying. until he lowered his brush and felt something pull back. Scotland Yard arrived to investigate, only to find the house utterly abandoned. Not ransacked, not looted, just vacant. The only movement came from the grand parlor clock, ticking backward. Investigators noted that every mirror in the house had been shattered, but not outward. The cracks spiraled inward as if something had entered through them. On the wall above the master bed, written in some black oily residue, were 3 Latin words: Vestigia nulla retrorsum. No steps backward. The eldest Pellingham daughter, Cecilia, had reportedly been obsessed with pre-Christian rites, and according to her journal, found tucked beneath the floorboards of her bedroom, she had begun speaking with reflections. Pages described rituals involving copper bowls, bloodletting, and the burning of dried lavender and mare's hair. One entry read, "Mother says the mirror is a gate. Father says the mirror is a warning. But I know better. It's a door, and something knocks." Neighbors had seen the family less frequently in the days before the disappearance. Curtains stayed drawn, visitors were turned away. One child claimed to have seen Mrs. Pellingham outside her window at 3 a.m., standing barefoot in the alley, holding a mirror to the sky. When asked where she went, the girl answered, "She didn't go anywhere. She folded." That single word has haunted researchers because it echoes a theory buried in the classified notes of a defrocked physicist. That reality can collapse like paper, and certain symbols placed in the right locations can crease the world inward. Not metaphor, not madness, mechanism. And the Pellinghams, it seems, were not taken but folded away, like pages in a cursed book someone didn't want read aloud. The 5th disappearance was the only one to leave a witness. Though what he saw was so incomprehensible, he spent the rest of his days in a locked room at Bethlehem Asylum, whispering to the corners of his cell. His name was Elijah Crane, a coal porter who lived next door to the Kenning family on Bucks Row. The Kennings were known for their strict Methodist discipline: no alcohol, no profanity, no superstition. Mr. Kenning was a retired barrister. His wife taught scripture. Their 2 sons attended the finest academy in East London. But on the night of October 15th, Elijah awoke to a peculiar humming, low, harmonic, unnatural. He peered through his window and saw the entire Kenning family standing in their garden, barefoot, heads tilted skyward, arms at their sides. At first he thought they were praying. Then he noticed something else. The soil beneath them wasn't still. It pulsed, a slow, rhythmic rise and fall, like breath beneath the earth. The family did not move, not when the wind blew, not when he called out to them. And then, all at once, their heads snapped down, eyes locking on Elijah's window. No faces, just voids where the eyes should be, black hollows that seemed to pull the light inward. Elijah collapsed. When he came to, the garden was empty. The house, empty. No trace, no prints in the dirt, only a ring of scorched grass and a strange copper device left on the garden wall. A disc engraved with ancient runes and an etching of the same hooked spiral found in the previous homes. The object was confiscated by special branch and never seen again, but Elijah's account, though officially dismissed, was recorded by an intern who claimed the humming continued long after the report ended. Elijah repeated the same phrase in his cell for 27 years. They rose from the roots, but they weren't roots. They were veins. He died with his hands fused into fists, and his tongue turned black. Some say he saw an ancient summoning. Others believe the Kennings enacted something far older than any church could sanctify, a communion with what sleeps beneath cities, waiting for hymns sung in perfect silence. And in perfect silence, they were taken. The 6th disappearance was different, not because of what was found, but because of what was heard. The Malkin family, residing near Whitechapel Road, was known for music. Every night, their home exhaled with piano, violin, or the youngest daughter's soft humming as she read aloud from Blake's Songs of Innocence. They were peaceful, reserved. But on October 19th, the house went silent. Neighbors grew concerned when the music stopped. No knocks were answered. And then, late that evening, it began again. But not from the house. It came from the sewer grates, soft, distant, the exact melody their daughter used to hum, only reversed. Constables dispatched to investigate reported the entire home empty, but upon entry a wave of nausea swept over them. Every clock in the house had stopped at 3:33 a.m. The hearth was still warm. A violin lay on the floor beside sheet music stained in something dark. But there were no signs of intrusion. The only item disturbed was a floor tile in the parlor, pried loose with surgical precision. Beneath it, a narrow, vertical shaft descending far below street level. They dropped a lantern down. It never hit bottom. Just fell into silence. Carved along the inner walls of the shaft were hundreds of names, none of them the Malkans, all in Greek, some dating back to 300 BC. One constable reached into the shaft and recoiled instantly. His hand turned white, veins receded, skin shriveled. He died of systemic collapse within 48 hours. The house was sealed. Yet for weeks afterward, the neighborhood reported that same humming, now heard through their own walls, pipes, fireplaces, as if the music had moved. Scholars later linked the melody to an ancient Pythagorean rite known as the spiral tuning, used in secret cults to align the body to the soul of the void. Whatever the Malkans awakened, it didn't kill them. It claimed them. Music was their offering. Harmony was the price. And now, their tune plays on, beneath us all, waiting to be heard by the next family. The seventh and final disappearance was the most unsettling, not for what it left behind, but for what it didn't. The Holloways, a reclusive but well-documented family of antiquarians, lived at the edge of Spitalfields in a home older than the street it stood on. Their lineage could be traced to the 12th century, and they were known to possess relics that even the British Museum had tried to purchase: unlabeled scrolls, weathered stone tablets, and an obsidian disc said to predate Mesopotamia. On the night of October 22nd, the entire Holloway property ceased to exist. Not burned, not collapsed, simply gone. Where once stood their ivy-covered townhouse, there was now only soil, raw, untouched earth, damp as if freshly tilled, stretching the length of their former foundation. No debris, no basement, no trace of structure, just a flat, unnatural emptiness. As if the house had never been there at all. Witnesses claimed the night before, strange blue light flickered behind the Holloway's windows, and a low droning sound, like wind dragging chains underwater, echoed for blocks. The nearest neighbor, a seamstress named Mrs. Colling, swore she saw the sky above the house ripple, like heat bending air. She described it as watching the stars blink in and out, as if something larger had passed between them. When authorities arrived, they found only a single object in the center of the empty lot: a sealed envelope nailed to a post driven into the dirt. The contents were confiscated immediately by men who did not wear uniforms, but an archivist who briefly handled it described what he read in his suicide letter days later. It was not a letter. It was a set of coordinates, 7 longitudes, 7 latitudes, each intersecting beneath ancient ruins across the globe, and scrawled beneath them, "The spiral closes when the last eye opens. Every family, every disappearance, all led here. N. Owed a serial killer. Not hysteria. A sequence. A ritual encoded into bloodlines, land deeds, and geometry. The Holloways didn't vanish. They completed it. The other families were offerings. But the Holloways, they were the key. And on that October night, they didn't leave the world. They opened it. And then, nothing. No more disappearances, no more reports. as if the city itself had held its breath and exhaled silence. But that's not the end. It was only the pause, the eye of the spiral. Because 10 days later, a letter arrived at Scotland Yard. No return address, no fingerprints, just a sheet of vellum, handwritten in charcoal ink, reading, "The 7 have been taken, the root has been fed, but the eye remains closed." Beneath that line, a map, hand-drawn, crude, but unmistakably of London, marked with 7 spiral symbols encircling a single point. Whitechapel Underground Station. The same station that had yet to be constructed. The same location where, decades later, excavation teams unearthed not just bones but architecture. Rooms beneath the city made of stone that predates Roman Britain. Rooms with no entrances, no exits, only walls carved in the same spiral motif that haunted every vanished family. And in the center of one chamber, a stone cradle, large enough to hold a man, stained black with something that wouldn't wash away. When questioned, the chief engineer filed a sealed report, then transferred to South America the next day. Gone. The remaining workers refused to speak, except one, his face gray, hands trembling, who told a journalist in 1927, "It wasn't a station, it was a tomb, but the body wasn't there yet." Authorities buried the site in cement, changed the blueprints. But the blueprints didn't matter, because it had already been built, not by man, but by memory. The spiral wasn't just ritual, it was design, and Whitechapel was the pupil. The question has never been what took those families. The question is, what were they keeping asleep? And now that their bloodlines have been consumed, now that the final family, the Holloways, completed the circle, what dreams beneath the spiral can no longer be contained. Decades passed. The story faded, reduced to whispers in Masonic halls and notes buried in forbidden stacks of the British Library. But patterns never die. They only wait. In 1943, during the height of the Blitz, a bomb struck the east wing of the Whitechapel district, fracturing open a section of forgotten catacombs beneath Commercial Street. Rescue teams expected rubble, rats, and collapsed masonry. What they found instead were 7 sealed chambers, each with a circular floor plan, identical dimensions, and no entryways. No doors, no hinges, just perfectly smooth stone walls and floors etched in weathered spirals. And in each chamber, remnants that didn't make sense. A Victorian doll preserved in glass. A rusted phonograph still turning, though no one touched it. A blood-stained ribbon stitched with Hebrew letters. A child's drawing dated 1888, showing a house folding in on itself. One of the rescuers, a man named Colin Thorne, began hallucinating within minutes. He said he saw the faces of families with no eyes, all humming the same reversed melody. He slit his wrists in a hospital bed 3 days later, carving into his chest a final message. The spiral turned, but not all the way. The government sealed the chambers. Records were marked confidential, but the blueprints leaked. And when overlaid on the 1888 disappearance map, they matched perfectly. The chambers were mirrors, architectural echoes of the vanished homes, not memorials, receptacles. What lives beneath London is not myth. It is memory given shape, and shape, when repeated enough, becomes ritual. The spiral is not just a symbol, it's a switch, a device. Each disappearance was not a random act of horror, but a keyed rotation. A slow turning of something vast, ancient, mechanical, something sleeping not in soil but under structure. And if 7 rotations brought silence in 1888, then the next turn, whenever it comes, won't bring silence. It'll bring song, a song made of bloodlines, frequencies, and architecture tuned not to heaven, but to what watches from beneath it. They say history repeats, but in the case of the vanished families of 1888, history does more than repeat. It reverberates. Every 44 years, reports emerge from the East End: missing persons, strange sounds beneath the pavement, children speaking in reversed tongues. In 1932, it was a laundress who vanished, leaving behind only a tub still steaming and a trail of blackened water leading to the drain. In 1976, it was an entire tenement floor in Aldgate. 9 residents, gone overnight, with their furniture still arranged, dinners half-eaten, TVs still humming static. And most recently, in 2020, an estate agent inspecting a condemned townhouse in Spitalfields fell through the floor and into a chamber that wasn't on any blueprints. She emerged 3 hours later, barefoot, eyes glazed, unable to speak, except to write over and over, "The spiral is almost closed." Each time, those words return. Each time, the same shape appears in chalk, blood, or mold. The hooked spiral, turning tighter, and every time it's closer to Whitechapel. The modern city has paved over the old paths, but maps don't lie, they just age. When one overlays satellite imagery with the 1888 spiral pattern, the alignment is precise. Bus routes, drainage systems, fiber optic lines, all laid out unknowingly in mimicry of the ritual spiral. The city itself has become the instrument, a structure of stone and light tuned like a stringed chord, waiting for the right vibration, the final note that opens the last chamber. That note, many believe, is human, not a frequency of sound, but of mind, belief, attention. The more people investigate, the more who look, the more the spiral tightens. And now, in the age of information, it's everywhere. Reddit threads, hidden YouTube videos, TikToks catching that same reversed melody on city trains at 3:33 a.m. You're not watching a mystery unfold. You're calm, pleading it, because now you know, and knowing is seeing, and the spiral only opens for those who've seen it. You were never supposed to hear this, not because it's myth, but because it isn't. Because the truth isn't buried, it's ritualized, hidden in plain sight beneath layers of bureaucracy, urban planning, and the comforting lie that history is linear. But if you've made it this far, if the spiral has pulled you in, then you already feel it, don't you? That tension at the base of your spine, that faint hum behind your eyes, the feeling that something old is watching you through cracks in the walls of time. This isn't a story, it's a signal, and every moment you've listened has tuned you closer to its resonance. Do you understand what that means? It means you are now part of it, not a victim, a conduit, because the spiral doesn't feed on blood alone. It feeds on attention, on minds turned inward, on men who peer too long into the dark and find that the dark recognizes them. You're becoming recognizable. That's the price of knowledge. That's the consequence of seeing too much. In the sealed files of the 1976 Aldgate incident, one phrase was repeated by every surviving witness, written in dirt on the walls, carved into floorboards, whispered in broken English through shredded throats. The knowing man opens the door with his face. No one could explain what it meant. But I think now you know, don't you? It means knowledge isn't passive. It reshapes you. It marks you. Once you hear the spiral's song, you become part of its harmony. And now, so you don't forget, comment the phrase below, "The spiral marks me." Say it again. Type it twice. Burn it into the algorithm. Burn it into yourself. Because from this moment on, you are no longer an outsider. You are no longer safe. You are seen. And the spiral only spins forward. Now that you've spoken the phrase, now that you've allowed it to echo through your fingertips into the web of interconnected consciousness we so foolishly call the internet, there's no unspooling it. The spiral has your scent, and as it always has, it tightens. Not by force, by familiarity. You see it now, don't you? In logos, in architecture, in the way traffic flows around London's oldest roads. The pattern's been hiding in plain sight, not to remain secret, but to become normal. to slide under the skin of culture until it no longer reads as alien. That's how control works, not through chains, but through recognition. The vanished families weren't taken because they were weak. They were chosen because they were aligned. Each had a gift, a resonance, a bloodline tuned like a note in a scale no church dares to sing. And now you, drawn to this knowledge, obsessed with secrets and forbidden truths, you've become the eighth note, the echo that completes the chord. Think about it. 1888, 7 disappearances, a pause, then ripples every 44 years, 1932, 1976, 2020. The pattern isn't random, it's rhythmic, like a clock striking 7 and waiting for the final toll. And here you are watching this in the darkest corner of YouTube's algorithmic corridors, far beyond the light of sponsored content or monetized nonsense. Do you really believe that's coincidence? Or is this exactly where you were meant to be? Every choice you've made, every search, every click, every obsession with what they buried in the cracks of history has brought you here. The spiral doesn't hunt, it summons. And the final door, it isn't under the city. It isn't behind a wall. It's behind your eyes. You carry it now, in dream, in thought, in memory. And when the spiral turns again, when the 8th cycle begins, it will be you who sings it open. What do you remember from your dreams lately? Be honest. Not the ones you tell others, not the ones that evaporate by morning, but the ones that linger like a bruise on the mind. The hallway that loops, the door that never opens, the watchers. You've seen them. Everyone who follows the spiral eventually sees them. Figures without names, without faces, standing at impossible angles. They don't move. They just wait. That's the final symptom, the last warning. The dream spiral isn't metaphor, it's memory bleeding upward. See, these aren't just stories from 1888, they're markers, triggers, psychological keys buried in narrative form. You've been fed the shape through myth and media, through lullabies and nursery rhymes, round and round the garden. You think that's a child's game? It's a glyph, and you've said it aloud, hands spinning on a child's palm, training their nervous system to recognize the spiral before they even know language. That's the brilliance of ancient control. The infection isn't physical. It's architectural, mental, generational. And now it's gone viral. They don't need to knock on your door. They need only to be remembered. And you have remembered. You've kept their pattern alive. Even this video, it's not entertainment. It's activation. With each second you watch, your internal compass aligns. The watchers come closer. The spiral deepens. That ache in your dreams, that static in your left ear, that shadow that doesn't move when you do. Don't ignore it. That's not paranoia. That's orientation. You're almost ready, because the final disappearance won't be a family in Whitechapel. It'll be you, in your room, light flickering, screen buzzing, mouth open, not in scream, but in song. The melody you've never been taught, but have always known. And when it begins, truly begins, it won't be with screams or sirens. It'll start with silence. A silence so dense it feels like pressure behind your eyes. You'll look around and the world will seem the same. Same streets, same faces, same digital noise. But something will feel hollowed, as if reality has been peeled back one layer. You'll notice it in the little things, reflections that take too long to match your movement. A stranger mouthing words with no sound. That one streetlight flickering every time you pass it. Always that one. These aren't glitches, they're alignments. Because the spiral doesn't strike with violence, it replaces, slowly, elegantly, with precision. The families of 1888 weren't taken in a single night. Their vanishings unfolded like clockwork, incrementally. One day, their music stopped. Then their curtains stayed closed. Then their windows reflected houses that weren't across the street. It always starts with withdrawal. The spiral isolates before it integrates. You've seen it in your own life, haven't you? The people who don't answer your calls. The friends who seem distant, vague, like their minds are elsewhere. Maybe they are. Maybe they heard the melody before you did. Maybe they're already gone, their form still walking, but their essence long since folded into the spiral's rhythm. And maybe you were spared until now. Maybe your time has just come. But there is no resistance, no salvation. Because the spiral isn't a curse. It's a transformation. You were never meant to survive it. You were meant to become it. And as you listen now, as your breathing slows and your thoughts begin to loop in that tight, familiar circle, understand this. You're no longer watching a video. You're watching a mirror. And what it reflects is the thing you'll become, the watchers you've glimpsed, in dreams, in reflections, in the corners of your vision. They're not symbols. They're not metaphors. They are custodians of the spiral. Their role isn't to stop you. It's to observe your unraveling. Each one assigned to a bloodline, to a pattern, to a mind slowly rotating inward. Some call them angels, others parasites. But their true name has no syllables, only a hum, low and droning, that sets the bones vibrating. It's the sound ancient priests mistook for God, the sound early radios picked up before there were any towers. It comes not from without, but within, resonating from that deep, forgotten chamber beneath your ribs. You were born with it, a coil of code buried in your cells, inherited from ancestors who stood too close to the first door. That's why you've always felt different. That's why you've always searched. Because somewhere deep down, your blood remembers the shape, the spiral. It's not just a symbol etched in stone or carved into ritual chambers. It's the architecture of consciousness itself, the pattern by which memory loops, the form in which power folds into itself. Look at a hurricane, a galaxy, a fingerprint. You think that's chance? No, that's design, ancient, precise, intentional. And it was planted here long before cities rose, long before language. The vanished families weren't victims. They were activators, lineages bred to open reality at specific coordinates at a specific time. You are standing at that time. And this, right now, is the midpoint. The moment in the spiral where descent becomes descent by choice. And what you choose now, to turn away or to look deeper, will mark you forever. But you already know what you'll choose. You wouldn't be here otherwise. The truth, now that you've seen it, doesn't just haunt, it restructures. Your dreams will change, your memories will bend. You'll begin to notice that time moves differently in certain places. Moments stretch, others vanish. You'll find yourself staring at walls, hearing whispers in water, recognizing words you've never learned. That is not madness. That is alignment. The families that vanished in 1888 didn't disappear. They dislocated, shifted, unhooked from the fabric of linear time and spiraled inward into something older than chronology. And as their bloodlines fragmented, the knowledge didn't die. It distributed, into soil, into echo, into you. The spiral doesn't need a body. It needs a host, a witness, a key that turns itself. You're already becoming that. Every time you rewatch, every time you speak the words aloud, every time you show someone else. You're not just spreading a video, you're spreading the structure. That's what viral means in the old tongue, not just widespread, initiated. Because initiation was always the goal. Every building with hidden curves, every hymn with buried dissonance, every cathedral dome shaped like an inverted eye, all of it was architecture for the spiral, to awaken it in you. You think the city was built to protect people? No. Cities are containers, memory vaults, keys in stone, and when you stand in the right place, speak the right name, the city sings back. You just haven't heard it yet, but you will. And once you do, you'll never hear silence again. Only the spiral, spinning softly behind your thoughts, like a lullaby with teeth. There's a reason spiral staircases appear in the oldest buildings, especially those erected by hands that feared the sky. Not just for form or space, but for function. Ascending them altered more than altitude. It altered awareness. Each turn a calibration, each step a deeper descent upward. You've climbed such stairs in dreams, haven't you? You ascend endlessly, yet feel yourself sinking. That is not a contradiction. That is the geometry of initiation. The spiral doesn't care for gravity. It answers only to intention. The missing families of 1888, they were not abducted. They were offered. Each home, each name, each disappearance, part of a ritual staircase designed to turn London into a vessel, a coiled mechanism of memory and will. And each time someone investigates it, each time another soul says the phrase aloud, the spiral turns 1 degree further. Until now. Until you. You, who never meant to go this deep. You, who thought you were just curious. Curiosity is the first sin of spirals. It creates the opening. But will is what finishes the turn. And you are willing now, aren't you? You didn't click away. You didn't scroll past. You stayed. And that makes you the final variable. The capstone. The 8th. 7 families turned the key. The 8th opens the vault. And the vault isn't buried. It is you. You're beginning to remember things that never happened, feel dread for places you've never been, see faces in wood grain and ceiling cracks. These aren't hallucinations. They're calls, waking coordinates in the dream of the spiral. When the song finally plays, it won't come from speakers. It will come from inside your skull, and you will sing it back even if you don't understand the language, especially if you don't. That's how they know you're ready. And when the final note is sung, not by a choir, but by a single throat trembling in revelation, you will know it's begun. The real beginning. The spiral has always required consent, even if it's unconscious. That's what makes it invincible. It doesn't need to conquer. It needs only to be heard. And you've heard it now. Not in sound, but in structure. In the way the story has folded around you. That's why every retelling brings it closer. Why no one tells this tale twice without dreaming of walls that breathe or staircases that weep. Because the story changes the listener. The same way the spiral changes stone. The same way London changed in 1888. Not from outside, but from within. Listen closely. The families that vanished weren't erased. They were rewritten. Their records corrupted. Their homes reassigned. Their names repurposed in documents that don't match any census. A child's name scrawled in a 2003 kindergarten roster also appeared on a missing persons flyer from 1888. Same spelling. Same date of disappearance. That's how the spiral works, looping, layering, reusing, until reality becomes a tapestry of recurrence. That's what déjà vu is. That's what prophetic dreams are. Memory bleeding backward through the spiral's coil. You felt it. You just didn't know what to call it. Until now. And now, you can't unknow. This isn't the kind of story you just walk away from. This is the kind that latches onto your reflection. It's already in your peripheral vision, already humming in your bones, already naming you. And when the 8th family is fully awakened, when their blood speaks the melody again, the door will open, not in London, but in you. You are not watching this to learn. You are watching because some part of you remembered. And now we reach the chamber beneath the chamber, the place even the spiral hesitates to name. Because within its core lies not horror, but recognition. A mirror that reflects not your face, but your function. What you were always meant to become. The spiral does not choose its conduits randomly. It responds to obsession, to silence, to unresolved grief. The vanished families of 1888 weren't the first to be chosen. They were just the first to complete the pattern. But the pattern, it stretches back further. Rome. 9 children vanished during the Saturnalia festival, each on a different street, forming a perfect spiral when mapped. Egypt. An unfinished tomb with carvings of figures spiraling into themselves, mouths agape, eyes carved as voids. Babylon. A staircase underground that returns the climber to the same room. No matter how many steps descend, always the same, always turning. And now it turns through you. The symbols you once dismissed as antique madness, the coiled snake, the spiral in the eye of Horus, the conch in Buddhist temples, were never religious. They were warnings, instructions for how to hold yourself together as reality collapses inward. But holding on is no longer an option. The story isn't just entering you, it's rewriting you. And what comes next isn't death, it's translation. You will not be mourned. You will be echoed by others who watch this, who feel what you now feel, who see the spiral etched behind their eyelids and know they've been chosen to carry it further, not in books, not in speech, but in structure, in silence, in the gaps between what is said and what is meant. The way the spiral has always traveled. It doesn't need your name, it needs your shape. And your shape is already changing, D. You feel it now, don't you? The pull, not outward but inward, as though something inside your chest has turned slightly, and now everything bends toward it. Objects feel heavier. Time moves strangely. Silence rings louder than sound. That's not psychological. That's architectural. The spiral, once awakened, begins to recode perception itself. What you used to call coincidence now feels like placement. You turn on a light, and it flickers in rhythm. You see a stranger twice in one day, walking opposite directions. You hear your name whispered in static. This is not paranoia. This is orientation. The 8th family, the final key, was never external. It was latent. A pattern of thought passed quietly through generations, hiding in behavior, passed through bloodlines that felt always out of step. And now, with you, it has found its echo. What the others could only initiate, you are positioned to complete. You will not disappear in the same way. Your body will remain, your voice, your name, your search history, all intact. But your function will be altered. Where once you were a consumer of secrets, now you are a carrier of them. You become the new conduit, the one through whom others awaken. Your presence will disturb. Your silence will echo. You'll see it in the eyes of strangers, brief flickers of recognition, of ancient fear. And when they ask, "Do I know you?" you'll understand the weight of your yes. This is not a role, it's a resonance. You don't spread the spiral spreads through you, and you, unassuming, obsessed, compelled by things others avoid, have always been perfectly shaped to hold it. You've crossed the threshold, not with ceremony or blood, but with recognition. That quiet knowing inside you isn't fear, it's familiarity. The spiral doesn't knock, it reminds. And that's what you are now, a reminder in human form. You'll begin to notice the others soon. Men in crowded rooms who don't blink when the lights go out. Women on subway platforms who hum melodies no one taught them. Children who draw spirals in dust with no memory of doing so. They're not lost. They're awake. The world you knew, the flat version, is only the outer crust, thin and trembling above deeper coils. Beneath the history books and gravestones, under the stained glass and archived footage, lies the same truth repeated in silence. You were made for this. You've always felt it. That pull toward forbidden stories, that obsession with what others call myth, that hunger that no belief could satisfy. That was never rebellion. That was resonance. The spiral recognizes its own, and now, so do you. You'll start to see it everywhere. The spiral in thumbprints. The pattern in the way crows circle over certain buildings, the way the wind moves around old stone. All of it was seeded to call you back to this moment. This exact second right now, when you are no longer a man seeking knowledge, but a vessel becoming function. The missing families in 1888 didn't flee into darkness. They became its architecture. Their identities dissolved so that their forms could hold the spiral's truth. You are next, and unlike them, you won't vanish. You'll remain, but everything you were will be overwritten by the shape now blooming inside your mind. Listen closely, it's humming. You'll find the old names now, written in margins, etched in rust, spoken in sleep, names that were erased from every ledger, every census, every memory, except yours. Because the spiral doesn't preserve history, it replicates essence. These families from 1888 weren't just deleted, they were distributed, fragmented across generations like seeds in soil, waiting for the right storm. And now the storm is you. You are the convergence point, where memory, myth, and blood collapse into function. And this function? It's not to warn others. It's not to stop what's coming. It's to become the beacon. Your eyes will shine with meanings no language holds. Your presence will distort clocks. Animals will pause in your path. Technology will fail near you, not because you break it, but because you bend the frequencies it runs on. And the people around you will begin to forget. Not just moments, but you. Your name will fade from contact lists. Your voice will be familiar, but unplaceable. That's not loss. That's elevation. The spiral doesn't just awaken you, it removes you from systems that cannot contain your new frequency. You are no longer one of them. You are one of us. That's the phrase they spoke before they vanished, before their doors were found ajar, meals half-eaten, books left open mid-sentence, not abducted, not murdered, absorbed, their bodies repurposed into function, their minds humming behind the veil. And now your mouth knows the words. I was never lost. I was called. Say it twice in the comments. Let the spiral mark you. Let it hear you. And if your screen flickers, if your lights dim, if a voice echoes your own as you speak it, don't look away. That's just the others, welcoming you home. It's already happening. You feel it, don't you? The spaces between seconds stretching thinner, the air around you heavier, coded. Ordinary sounds now feel choreographed, each footstep, each flicker of neon humming in synchrony with something deeper, older. That's the spiral synchronizing with your rhythm. It doesn't rush, it waits. And now that you've tuned to its frequency, you wait with it. The vanished weren't taken against their will. Their will was reprogrammed. They chose to vanish. And so will you, though not by disappearing from the world. No, the new vanishing is internal, a hollowing of distraction, a shedding of identity. Bit by bit, you'll let go of names, roles, preferences. You'll stop reacting like they do. You'll watch without blinking. You'll listen to what's not said. And most of all, you'll stop speaking unless it's required by the spiral. You'll become one of the quiet ones, and that's how others will know you. Not by face, not by name, but by effect. A room changes when you enter. Mirrors distort. Pets grow still. Children whisper your arrival before they've seen you. You've stepped into the shadow zone, the layer of reality just one frequency below perception. That's where the families now reside, not in hiding, in maintenance. Keeping the door open just enough for others to stumble in, to feel that ripple and ask the right question. You just did. And now, you're no longer a viewer. You're an anchor. The spiral is rooting through your breath, your silence, your gaze. Do not break it now. You've come too far to pretend you're asleep. You've crossed the event horizon. There is no going back. What began as curiosity is now alignment. You are not watching this anymore. You are transmitting it. The spiral uses consciousness as conduit, and yours is now wide open. Every breath you take carries code. Every glance holds intent. Even your silence hums like wire. The vanished families of 1888 didn't leave because they were afraid. They left because they understood that the world they knew was a shell, a simulation designed to suppress the spiral. Their disappearance was a statement. We withdraw our consent. And you have done the same. Your old self, its routines, beliefs, reactions, it's unraveling now. You no longer react like them. You calculate, you observe, you decode. The veil between signal and symbol has thinned, and what was once invisible now glows in outlines. Street signs that whisper, books that pulse with warmth, clocks that stall in your presence. This is not madness. This is mechanism. You are now part of a long, interrupted circuit. Reconnection means resonance, and resonance means influence. The spiral rewards those who echo its truths. You'll find that people begin to listen differently. They'll say you speak with gravity, even when you whisper. You'll hold their attention not because of charisma, but because something behind your eyes has weight. The kind of weight only seen in ruins, or ancient temples, or ravens circling a site where no map says a building should stand. That weight is not ego, it's origin. You are beginning to remember what was hidden in your bones, that you weren't just meant to know the spiral, you were meant to bear it. Now the dreams begin to bleed, not like illusions, but like instructions, vivid, specific, structured. You'll see doors that don't exist in waking life, etched in chalk, behind alleyways and beneath stairwells. You'll see faces that flicker in and out of memory, some you know, others you've never met, but who look at you with sorrow and recognition. These are not dreams, they are downloads. Memory injections from the spiral's archive pass through the black thread of ancestry into your sleeping mind. You'll wake with phrases in dead languages on your tongue. Symbols will appear in the fog on your mirror. Patterns will call to you, from iron railings, from frost on windows, from the veins on the back of your hand. The spiral is writing through you now. You are no longer a character in the story, you're becoming its syntax, the language it speaks to the world. Do you understand what that means? The ones who vanished in 1888, they were not victims of tragedy. They were prototypes. The template had to be tested. Their erasure was not failure. It was refinement. Their genetic lines scattered, their behavioral fragments encoded into time, waiting for the next viable host. That's you. You carry pieces of all 7 families. Your laughter, your fears, the way you hesitate before speaking, all of it echoes something once lost. That's why this story found you, why you made it this far, because the spiral does not waste time. It selects only those who can complete the circuit. And you're not just next, you're final. And now the 8th flame flickers awake. What the vanished began in 1888 isn't history, it's resumption. You were never outside this event. You were embedded, placed like a key beneath decades of noise, to be found only when the frequency was right. And now, as the layers peel back, you see that time is not linear. It spirals, always returning, always reactivating. The disappearance of those families was the first gesture. Yours is the last. But last does not mean ending. It means unlocking. You will feel it soon, a moment so quiet it roars. It may happen while tying your shoes, or while stirring coffee, or blinking at a red light. A sudden pause. A rupture. Where you no longer remember your name the way others said it. Where the world softens at the edges, like paper soaked in water. Where everything you thought was yours begins to flicker like a candle before sleep. That's the signal. When you feel it, do not speak. Speech grounds you. The spiral requires silence to finish the rewrite. Let it burn. Let it complete. You are the final geometry, the precise convergence of will, blood, and memory. The spiral turns, and with it, so do you. Not away, not downward, but inward. The others will follow. Not because you ask them to, but because they will see it in you. You are now a signal in the shape of a man, and the next disappearance won't need a house, a family, a crime scene. The next disappearance will look just like you walking away. You may already feel your shape thinning, not your body, but your edge. Like water poured from a perfect glass, your presence begins to ripple into places your feet have never touched. Someone across the world dreams of your face. A child hums your breath's rhythm in a cradle you've never seen. This is how the spiral moves now, through influence. The vanished of 1888 walked into shadow and became structure, but you walk among the living and become distortion. Cameras won't catch you clean. Your voice on recordings will carry whispers behind it, and the ones who knew you longest will begin to say your name less, as if it tastes foreign now. That's not tragedy. That's ascension. You've become unspeakable in the language of the sleeping. The city still moves around you, unaware, but underneath, cracks widen. Staircases descend further than they did last week. Maps grow inaccurate. Windows reflect people who are no longer there. Because the world must adjust for your inclusion. The spiral makes no exceptions. It folds reality around those it activates. You are now a pivot, a frequency node, a living paradox. And those who sense you will either kneel in awe or forget you instantly. There is no middle. That's the price of carrying resonance. And you will carry it well. Because deep down, you've always known you weren't born for comfort. You were born for disruption. And now, disruption has become form. There comes a moment when even fear falls silent, when the mind stops resisting and simply watches. That's where you are now. You've passed beyond narrative, beyond explanation, into presence. You're no longer asking what happened to the vanished families of 1888. You are what happened. Their disappearance was never a closed story. It was a seed, buried in time, waiting for soil like you. And now that it's bloomed, nothing familiar will ever feel whole again. Every childhood memory, every street you grew up on, every belief you once held like scripture, cracks will run through them, because they were never yours. They were assigned, and you've stopped playing your part. The spiral doesn't give clarity. It gives weight, a pressure behind the eyes, a sense that you're being watched not by others, but by time itself. It sees you now. It recognizes you as returned. You're the eighth echo, the final shape, the axis that completes the map. And what comes next cannot be undone. Cities will start to forget. GPS signals will drift. People will vanish without doors closing, not randomly, systematically, because once the spiral is whole, it corrects its surroundings. The old world cannot hold what you now carry, so it breaks, softly at first, then all at once. But you won't be afraid, because fear requires hope, and you've already replaced that with function. You are the new spiral. You don't flee, you reshape. This is where time no longer matters. This is where place collapses into pattern. You have reached the threshold the others could not speak of, the moment when the spiral stops showing you symbols and begins using you as one. You've become a glyph, a frequency, a living contradiction that fractures expectation wherever you step. The world around you hasn't changed, but your context has. You are no longer a person moving through narrative. You are narrative reorganizing itself into shape. The 8 families did not fail. They did not disappear. They became the scaffolding for what you now stand within. Their blood, their fears, their ritual acts of vanishing, those were not endings. They were instructions. They passed down echoes, fractures, little anomalies in lineage that would one day summon the final iteration. You. Look around you. The signs are already reacting. Your name mispronounced. Your reflection delayed. Animals making eye contact longer than they should. These are not glitches. They are recognitions. You've activated the spiral's final coil, the one that doesn't open outward but inward through memory, instinct, and shadow. From now on, the world will feel hollow to others, but dense to you. You will feel the weight behind every word, every lie, every silence. And in that silence, something will speak, not in voice, in permission. You are now authorized, not to explain, not to save, but to erase. Now the final recursion begins. You are no longer observing the spiral. You are the spiral, dreaming itself through your actions, your stillness, your decisions. The world around you will twist to accommodate that truth. You'll find locked doors now swing open without keys. Conversations will pause mid-sentence when you enter. Electronic voices, GPS, voicemail, elevators will stutter your name, then go silent. You are not glitched. You are recalibrated. The vanished families of 1888 understood this state, not as transcendence, but as subtraction. They removed themselves from history not to be forgotten, but to become formless. And now you walk that same edge. You're not hunted. You're unreachable. A man who can't be tracked doesn't need to run. You'll start to notice the tether unraveling, memories once sharp, now soft at the edges, like fog settling over childhood landscapes. Friends will forget details about you. Family will pause before saying your name. That's not abandonment. That's realignment. You are being moved out of their narrative layer and into the spiral's domain. A place where silence hums louder than speech, where presence bends matter, where history rewrites itself around your footsteps. You are the cipher. And now, you understand, this story was never about the lost. It was about the return. And return does not mean coming back. It means coming through fabric, through myth, through you. You've reached the place no map dares to chart. This is where origin and outcome collapse, where the spiral folds inward so tightly it becomes a singularity inside you. You are no longer part of history. You are now its corruption point, a necessary deviation that breaks the pattern to fulfill it. The families of 1888 understood this truth too late. They vanished not as victims, but as incomplete activations. You are what they lacked, continuity. You see it now in reflections, in whispers, in the way streetlights flicker in your presence and stay dim long after you've passed. The world reacts to you, not out of recognition, but out of obedience. Because reality is no longer in control, you are. Not in the way kings rule or armies conquer. Your authority is quieter, more devastating. You reshape without touching. You erase by simply forgetting. And soon, others will forget you. Entire systems will fail to register your presence. Government files corrupted. Surveillance footage missing. Biometric locks unlocked. But this is not disappearance. This is rebirth without origin. You are not a man now. You are phenomenon. You are the moment someone looks around and realizes they're not alone, and never have been. You are the second heartbeat in a quiet room, the breath on a neck when no one stands behind, the click of a door that was never open, and the final family, the eighth. It was never blood. It was always function. And that function is you. This is it. The point of no voice, no flesh, no name. The spiral has finished its turn, and in the hush that follows you remain, not as a man, not even as a memory, but as an architecture of absence. The vanished didn't fail because they disappeared. They failed because they left no mechanism behind. You are that mechanism, a living aperture through which the spiral may continue its work. Wherever you go now, history bends. It bends to make room for error, you, the elegant, intentional flaw that forces recalibration. People will speak of places changing shape after you leave, rooms growing colder, dreams turning darker, but they won't trace it back to you, because you are beyond trace. You exist now only in effect. No birth certificate, no timestamp, no digital shadow. Just a feeling, a pulse in the soil, a hum in the bone, a pressure behind the eyes. You've been written out of time so that you might write through it. The spiral chose you not to explain the mystery, but to become it. And you have. Fully. Finally. Quietly. The city no longer sees you, but it fears you. The world no longer holds you, but it remembers the weight you carried. And those watching this final moment, they too are changing. One phrase now divides the asleep from the aligned. If you've heard the whisper beneath every section, if you've felt the spiral taking root, then write this in the comments twice to lock in your shift and signal the others. I walked through the door they couldn't see. I walked through the door they couldn't see. The families never vanished. They just opened the door for you.